Today, I just have a few macro updates with the latest University of Michigan data that just came out today. And then we'll be going to Tavi, as usual, our macro strategist. And he's going to be talking about the question that we get a lot about the junior mining stocks and what's going on with the lag. And like I've been saying, the lag is your friend. So Tavi's going to explain what we mean by that. Quentin is going to be talking today about silver, but also about open pit mining and some important things to pay attention there, especially with respect to grade. And I'm not going to spoil anything there. And then he'll have a few updates as well on some of our newsworthy items. But so what's going on here? The University of Michigan consumer confidence or consumer it's not, what do they call it? It's not the confidence, but one of them is the confidence, one's the consumer sentiment. The consumer sentiment index came out today. It was a huge miss, a huge disappointment. Actually, the biggest miss on record, which Zero Hedge noted today. And we're at levels of the Michigan consumer sentiment index that is typically what we see right ahead of a recession. We saw this ahead of the COVID recession. We saw this during the housing bubble, ahead of the global financial crisis. We've seen it at other times, like in the early 80s double dip recession, and also also in that 1990 recession in the wake of the savings and loan debacle. So this is important news, but what's one of the major things going on here? Please go on to the next. Is that inflation expectations just continue to rise. And so this was an interesting chart that I saw on Twitter from Tier 1 Alpha that is looking at one of the components of the Michigan survey that is looking at where expectations for inflation over the next 5 to 10 years are 10% or higher. So among survey participants, what's the percentage of those in the survey that think that inflation over the next 5 to 10 years will be running 10% or higher? And we're talking about levels where 15% of respondents believe that inflation can be running at 10% or higher over the next 5 to 10 years. And this is also comparing it to 5-year trailing CPI. So the 5-year average annual CPI over the last 5-year trailing time period, you can see in that blue line has been, the blue line is actually expectations at 10% higher. So the brown line is the 5-year trailing CPI, and you can see that 5-year trailing CPI is up over 4%, and it's just been on the rise. So the Fed has originally they told us that inflation was transitory, and more recent, and then they realized they were behind the curve. Oops, they started hiking rates, but they're saying, but don't worry, inflation expectations, we expect them to be coming down. There were 6 rate cuts priced into the curve, at the beginning of this year, 6 rate cuts. That's down to less than 2 rate cuts now expected. Why? Because inflation expectations are not coming down at all. They're continuing to rise. Let's go on to the next. And this is looking at the mean 5 to 10 year estimate. So at the mean among the Michigan survey participants, the next 5 to 10 year inflation estimate is now 5.2% or 5.3%. It's popped up. And a lot of people look at the median. That's the one that's featured on Bloomberg, and it was supposed to come in at 3%. It came in at 3.5%. But the mean is actually much more reflective of the diversity of opinion, like those people who think that inflation can be above 10%. There's a huge diversity of opinion about where inflation is headed. But at the mean, people expect it to be 5.3% over the next 5 to 10 years. So I don't know what the Fed is thinking, but we are so far away from this period like 2, 3 years ago when the Fed told us that inflation was transitory. Um, it's not been transitory at all. Inflation expectations just continue to rise. And they did that transitory thing basically all over again at the beginning of this year by signaling that they were getting ready to cut interest rates because they expected that inflation expectations would be coming down. Inflation expectations are not well anchored at all. This is a major, major problem. This is why gold and silver are breaking out, why commodities are breaking out. This is why the market overall is starting to stall out. I know it seems like the place to be invested is still the Magnificent Seven, and here we are retesting the highs in the S&P 500. But you look at the sectors that are actually hitting new 52-week highs. It's the defensive stocks, it's utilities, it's consumer staples, and the broader stock market is really starting to weaken and stall out at the same time as you're seeing metals really start to perk up. You're seeing commodity stocks perk up. You're seeing large cap gold stocks perk up, and you're even starting to see small cap and even junior mining stocks perk up. I know the juniors are lagging